Broad Street Review Podcast, Philly's online hub for arts, culture, and commentary, where art and ideas meet. I am your host, Darnell Radford. Today on the podcast, Artistic Director Brian Sanders talks about the new interactive video game style experience, Dragonbutter, presented by Brian Sanders Junk. Here is my interview with Brian Sanders. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Darnell Radford, and today I am in the virtual studio, and joining me is Artistic Director Brian Sanders, whose organization, Brian Sanders Junk, has produced some of the most immersive, wildly talked about fringe productions throughout the years. And I'm excited to be here chatting with Brian Sanders today. So, Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. This is wonderful.
We were talking a little bit earlier about, getting our heads together and everything. I feel like this year is pretty much like January. When you say Happy New Year, you ask everybody how their New Year is. So how's your year so far, even though we're halfway through it?
Right. Yeah, exactly. There was definitely a feeling of resetting buttons or coming out of somewhere or reemerging. So far, I'm feeling, as I was saying earlier, not quite on point, and I'm feeling a little discombobulated and trying. Obviously, we're navigating a new world, so that's a little weird. Mm-hmm. And then, how we're coming back is a little bit, needs to be felt out. And there isn't really just, okay, let's pick up where we left off. We've been transformed. So it's, I'm feeling that, I think.
Yeah. I'm definitely hoping that, while during this long intermission, we were hoping to get back to normal. I'm actually hoping that we do not get back to normal.
In so many ways.
Yeah, so many ways. I hope some meaningful change comes in the future for us all. Being that this is the first time I've chatted with you, and some of our listeners may or may not be aware, tell us a little bit about Brian Sanders Junk.
Ooh, let's see. It started as just an aspiration of a touring company. I wanted to be a sort of modern dance touring company straight out of college. And so I put together my first show in Philadelphia at the Trocadero Theater. And it was very, it was cutting edge modern dance. And since that time, I have certainly evolved, both as an artist, but I think in process and what I make too. And, what the experience is for the viewer of whatever it is that I do. In that time that I started, my aspirations for what I can see from here. My cat, I got two COVID cats. I'm going to knock my video games off of the thing. I saw him batting it. Sorry. Okay. So, within the process of aspiring to that, I, signed up one year to do a fringe project. And then 20 or more years later, I have, developed an audience here locally in Philadelphia, which I love, and I love creating for, and they're tremendously supportive. I've since actually given up on touring because my productions are too kind of site-specific and complicated to sort of, bring into, from city to city, or, drop in on a one night, overnight to some city. I tried it initially, but it really didn't work out so well. So
Mm.
I'm really having fun. My latest sort of kind of invention of junk is, we are site-specific, immersive performance theater. And we find a site, build a project in that site, and, bring patrons in. And that's what we've been doing. As well, we collaborate a lot locally. We just finished two really distinct and different but exciting collaborations with the Philadelphia Orchestra, and I've certainly worked with other companies in the area. So that's junk for you.
I think it's interesting. We did have this mindset of trying to put our work into a traditional theatrical space, but Philadelphia has embraced the site's specificity of work, especially because of the nature of our Fringe Festival allows for that, to think outside the box. We do not have a ton of venues ready to just turn on the lights and go. So we do have to get creative in those spaces and sort of imagine a world, which I also think just lends to the escape that we're supposed to, participate in once we get into a space anyway. So I think that is a great thing.
Yeah, it is. And I'm not sure if ironic is the right word, but, it's in general, Philadelphia has, what I would call a traditional and even, dare I say, conservative. Just, if you look at the architecture and the my dad used to say, "What are you doing in Philadelphia? It's filled with lawyers and accountants, and to give credit to, the people of Philadelphia have been so willing, to try out these different types of, one year I did a show in an underground swimming pool, and it was sold out. People, climbed downstairs into into an underground swimming pool. And so while we have a conservative veneer in Philadelphia, we're certainly willing to try new things, which I love, and that's why I'm still here creating, I guess.
Yeah, I think Philadelphia is a place where FOMO is actually a good thing. The fear of missing out. There are so many events here that are like must see, and I think we do a great job with word of mouth and telling other people, "Oh, I saw this experience. It was so great. You got to go see it. It's sold out already, but you have to go see it." But it just makes for more notable, memorable experiences throughout the years.
Yeah, truly. But and they end up being a little bit ephemeral. That they're not, I don't know how long Cats played on Broadway, but it certainly wasn't ephemeral.
Yeah. And you're thinking about like, is that event coming back, or is there going to be like a replay of that? It'd be really nice to see. Nope, you missed it. That was 6 years ago, and but you can move on to the next things.
Yep. Yeah.
So as I said, we went through this long intermission. I'm definitely interested to know what artists were doing during this intermission period. Like, what was going on in your mind? What was sort of your thought process? Were you just planning, or were you just laying in wait?
Well, there was a lot going on in my head, and I actually ended up keeping myself pretty creatively busy on several attempted projects, and also, it's funny. I was talking with someone else about, for instance, a lot of times when I want to go get inspired, I'll take my headphones and head to the art museum, and walk around in some wing that I don't typically visit, and I was unable to do that, and I ended up sort of re-submerging myself in another artistic passion of mine, or what I view as an artistic immersive thing are video games. So
Mm-hmm.
naturally, this was an ideal time to re-immerse myself in a bunch of my favorite RPGs. So I spent, sort of the top of quarantine there. I didn't come out much, and I was exploring lots of different worlds and having a good time. And then eventually, I was like, I gotta get back out there. So I headed. I was very fortunate and came across a collaborative project with Meg Saligman, a muralist, over the last summer, not this current summer, but where we said, let's try and put artists back to work. And we had this giant space on Broad Street, and we had tons of room, and it was safe distancing, and everyone was wearing masks and in their own room creating. It didn't come to fruition because it was such a challenging time, but we ended up putting artists back to work, raising some money, and sort of staying active with that. At that same time, of course, there was an intense wanting to connect somehow with this whole Black Lives Matter movement. And then as an artist, I wanted to do what I could inside of that world. And so I at the last minute, I begrudgingly showed up at a virtual fringe. My work is so tangible, and the smell of the sweat on the dancers is so important, that I could not imagine myself creating something over Zoom. Mostly, I didn't want to learn a new medium. I knew that it was going to be a whole new learning curve, to create an experience for people in that context. And it was, but I did it, and I managed to combine both live and virtual at the same time. So it wasn't a recorded experience, and it was live. And we had, maybe 4 cameras on set, filming the whole time, and live audience, well spaced out in a big warehouse. So it went well, and I was able to create, and I, reached out to Dancer from Philadelphia, and I was like, hey, you guys aren't working, right? And he's like, no. And I said, come work with me. Let's do this. So, I was just able to stay creative. And, my cast shrunk to 2. and then it grew to 4, but they were all cohabitants. But I managed to stay creative throughout it all. And I feel like I'm going on a little bit, but all of that, sense of reconnecting with my favorite video games and sort of the more intimate casts and those experiences led to my current project. So, I came out happily ever after.
Yeah. So you said video games, and my ears pricked up, of course. I definitely escaped into a couple of open worlds. I feel like everybody jumped on this Animal Crossing bandwagon at the very beginning of this. If you had a Nintendo Switch, and for PlayStation, there's a series called Watch Dogs, and they had released a new one, Watch Dogs Legion, that was set in London. And it's techie, it's spy, it's hacker, and it was kind of great to just escape. And I just said, I'm bored. I'm going to London, or I'm going to go to my island and escape there for a couple of hours. It was such a great experience, and I wonder if people have much more appreciation for video games now that. They have sort of tapped into what the other gamers have already found to be valuable in there.
Well, I'll tell you, I still see a blank. You're either going to get someone who lights up or just a blank stare.
Yeah.
So there's some, sort of a connective switch that's needed to be able to tap into it. But it's like niche art forms. They're built. While we want to share them, they are built for a select, the chosen few, right? Which is a giant number right now. But anyway, just not everyone's gonna get it, right?
Yeah. So what video games were you escaping into, and
Oh,
how did they inspire this piece?
oh my goodness. I feel like it's like showing your underwear drawer. Um, I'm.
Now we want to see your underwear drawer.
um, I was playing just because I get a kick out of it, and I think I went into super hardcore mode on Dead Space 3. And there's one element inside that game, which is sort of one of the tech of that game that has this zero gravity that you fly around in. That I could spend hours in their space world. You float around in space with your little jet shoes on and scavenge, and they give the feeling of weightlessness. So I think my mover dancer brain kind of really responded to that and loves being there. And then I have another sort of ill passion for Dark Souls, which I can't seem to give up after so many years. And then sure, there's a couple of others in there, but those are probably two that I was playing a lot. That definitely. What I went back and visited too that I really enjoy and love. This is sort of has a special place in my heart. Is Resident Evil 4, and there's a lot of this sort of labyrinth quality of that game that I really brought into this performance.
I will tell you, I forget which version of Resident Evil it was, but I opened the door and 3 dogs were running after me as soon as I opened that door, and I was like, I'm done. I'm done. Can't do this. The same thing with Skyrim. I played Skyrim, and whenever I went into a cave with a big hairy spider, like, nope, pass.
I hear you. Yeah.
But the fact that a video game can move you in such a way, whether it's positive or negative, or whether it flips you, that is amazing in itself. And if you do experience video games like that, it is such a great feeling to just know that so many people work so hard on creating these worlds for us to exist in, and still created space for us in them at the same time. Especially with an open world game, you can go in any direction that you want to go and build what you want, and hold on to things that maybe other players aren't holding on to. So yeah, definitely good things.
I try to explain to people how magnificent they are, but it's a glowing lights or a blank stare.
Yeah, you have to be like, just let me show you, and then when you watch them glaze off, you go, so should we go get something to eat?
Sure.
So this experience is called Dragonbutter. So tell me about it.
Well, right off the bat, I wanted to take that, what we're both identifying with is that sort of magnificent feeling of just being in this open world that you can, explore, that, gives you a sense of story, but that you are sort of, champion of your own quests in. And, I wanted to give that magnificent and thrilling, exciting experience in real life. And, so how do I do that? And I set about at the beginning of the year, I think it was actually even December of last year, with a small team, and doing workshops and saying, how do we do this? How do we turn, an audience member into a person with an avatar? And, we started talking about it, and we really, as audience members, we realized when we started talking about it that that's something that we already do. When we go to a sports game, we we immediately identify with a team, or we identify with a player, or we I identify with going to see the Nutcracker. We if the dancer falls, we hear the audience go, oh, they feel what happens when something goes wrong or when something goes right. And so we naturally do it as humans. And I was like, well, how do I tap into that? And so that's when I started building. Dragonbutter is basically that. It's sort of a live adventure. You get swept into it right away. You don't I don't want to give everything away, but you're taken into it pretty quickly. It becomes an adventure, and you get moved through the adventure. There's sort of little mini quests inside of the adventure, and there's a story you learn about as you go, and it really evolves and ends, just like a video game, including a boss fight at the end. So, of course.
Yes. So there are elements of this that are like escape room.
Very much.
And escape rooms, they amaze me as well. I've been to a couple here in Philadelphia, and they usually have a theme. But as I get through it, I'm like, how did they even craft all of this? And
right.
But you think about how they have all the answers because they're the creators. So we're walking into a blank space and we don't know where to start. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's so immersive, because you start with a clue, and the clue is vague, but it's clear to them, the creators. Mm-hmm. And then once you figure it out, you just feel so empowered once you get to the end. So talk a little bit about the process of pulling all these pieces together.
Well, it was a learning curve again, and I did a lot of prototyping with people, and some things we naturally do better, just as I don't know what you want to call us, as patrons or players, versus not everyone sinks their teeth right into an escape room, and you got to lead them along a little bit further. People will stand and watch a performance like it's second nature. People, but it just depends, and then that, how do you guide a group of 12 people without dragging them forward or shoving them forward, and letting them find their own way and find their excitement, but keeping the pace going and moving them forward. I got lost. What were we talking about?
Question. How do you craft? How do you?
Begin to craft that was really, it was really about trial and error and bringing people in. I had so many, patient friends. I said, "Can you come over here? We're trying this thing," and so we really tried stuff out and said, "Okay, this works." And now, this summer we're in the beta trial. So again, it's still in trial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that concept. giving it time to sort of sort itself out, and if there are any kinks that need to be worked out, you'll work them out. But we also get to be in on the ground floor. We're part of that experience as well, not just the finished product, but the building of this.
So the giving feedback, absolutely, it's so important.
Yeah. So when did you begin to craft the beta trials? When did that start?
We started them in mid-spring, and once I knew basically what I wanted to do, I got my four characters in there, and we started writing. It was very challenging. I had a sort of linear storyteller, and they're working with me for a portion of it, and I'm non-linear when I create. I start at the end, I start at the beginning, I bounce all over the place, and I said, well, somehow we'll make it all match. And because, what I create tend to be sort of these fantastical worlds, you can get away with sort of folding space and doing all of that stuff. Eventually we had to, stitch it all together in a world that, made linear sense. And luckily, just moving through the world gives us, as an observer, linear sense of the story and how it unfolds. So, it turned out that, if you're sitting in a chair and you're trying to track a nonlinear story, it's very challenging. But if you are participating in the nonlinear story, it's much easier to track it, and it works better. So, just the process sort of, helped me discover that. So,
yeah. I've been noticing that. So I hate these two words, pivot and content, but I feel like many artists have had to pivot, over this time, or basically use these muscles for different tasks. And that's what I feel like this is, in a sense, because, we're not walking into a dance performance. We're walking into all the other elements that are always present in the performances that we can expect from you. But what parts of those were more of a challenge, or what parts of those did they surprise you that as you started to figure them out?
Okay, so I mentioned earlier, I'm going to talk about one pivot I had to take that I didn't necessarily think I was going to be very good at, unless I don't know how it ended up. I think it ended up okay. But my first pivot I had to take was a project with the Philadelphia Orchestra, and we did Carmen, an adapted suite of the Bizet piece. And so it ended up being kind of a dance story on film. And it was videoed, captured, edited, and then spliced together, with the orchestra performing, with the performers coming in and out of the orchestra experience, et cetera, et cetera. And it was completely new genre for me. I had no idea. I didn't know what it meant to do an over-the-shoulder shot. I didn't know, I was just completely out of my element. So it was more than a pivot, and I had to try and figure out what I was doing and how I was telling this story. And I worked really hard and long on it, but I think it came out pretty good. There was a push in a direction that I wouldn't naturally have gone in. So to further answer the question, one of the things that I like doing with myself as an artist is to push myself in directions that that are pivots, and I never go, okay, well, I'm going to do exactly what I did last year. I don't do that. So sometimes I accidentally do. But I never intentionally set out to do that. So I'm always looking for a way to shift perspective, or mine or the patron, and so it wasn't uncomfortable for me in this situation to shift that at all. There's I had just finished a project where I was working in virtual reality a year ago, and that was a dramatic pivot for me because I was working suddenly in 360, and I was worried about trying to get everyone looking in the same direction at the same time, and focusing on the possibility of where you can look at one time in a room, and that's really challenging, and getting everyone to look in the same direction. And so I got comfy with that, if you set a fire in one corner of the room, in general, people are going to focus in that direction. So, and learn how to sort of control space, so that people, are easier to focus, and the groups are smaller and that kind of thing, so that I'm moving people around, able to focus on their own details, but inside a greater linear focus.
So at the moment, the experience is about an hour, right? While you were crafting this, did you have more than an hour's worth of things?
Oh my
did you
God.
have less, or did you have to keep trying to add things to it?
This is supposed to be just 2 levels. So I don't know, like once I finish my full game, I don't know how there's going to be so many levels. So I had a lot more. A little bit we ran out of room, and then also we wanted this to be just a smart, sexy beta version. So we kept it tight. So there's the possibility that this will come back as Dragonbutter 2 in a giant, bigger, and more evolved way, for sure. I definitely didn't get everything into this trials version.
Yeah, I always wonder that. I always wonder how much was cut and how much inspires future work. Because will we be able to, sense those elements in future work?
Hmm.
Because sometimes you'll go in a direction where you're just like, this is still in the world, but it's kind of going off course.
Hmm.
But it's good, and I don't want to let it go. So
Hmm.
I'll just table this, and
So
we'll see
true.
what we can do with that later. So I like that you're already thinking maybe there's a part two to this
Oh yeah.
to keep
Absolutely.
going. Um, so have so even though the beta trials haven't started yet, have you had people go through this already? And what were their sort of responses to this?
Absolutely. And we, that was again part of our development process, was bringing people through, and you're constantly learning and getting feedback, and so and then the types of people. When I say type of people, the type of expectation that people bring is really what I mean. People that are coming to see a more typical dance program, versus
Hmm.
people, who I had someone who came in who said didn't know what they were getting into, but the first word out of their mouth was, "This is like some kind of great, video game. This is," and I was like, "Oh, good, you're on the right road, on the right track." And then I had another friend who's more used to my kind of proscenium dance programs, that was like, I couldn't figure anything out. I don't know what was going on. So, learning how much information to give up, and to nurture the experience with and not, is definitely a challenge. But we've been working on it, and it'll probably still always be a work in progress.
Yeah, because you're definitely going to bring in a new audience along with your traditional audience. And
I'm
I
hoping,
guess
yes.
as you're crafting it, you're thinking about how to satisfy them all,
Oh, absolutely.
and this still be your artistic piece. Uh, Tell us about Dr. Livingston.
Okay, well, I guess it's a little autobiographical. It might. One of the first things I started doing, in the middle of quarantine, was I went, into the studio by myself and just started working again. And I was, we were slated to do a project with the Philadelphia Orchestra, which is it's going to happen, but we don't know when yet. It's still on hold, because it's fairly large project, and so we want to
Mhm.
make sure that the timing is right. So we still hadn't we still hadn't suspended the production yet. So I was busy working on a concept of fairies. The production with the orchestra is a trilogy of Tchaikovsky pieces: Swan Lake, Sleeping Beauty, and the Nutcracker. And I'm kind of taking the fairy angle, and telling a whole story about the fairies inside of these sordid ballets. And so in that, I'm developing these ideas and prototypes and concepts and physical mechanisms to figure out how to make these fairies, and how to get these fairies to fly around the Kimmel Center. So in doing that, I'm feeling like a bit of a mad scientist. I'm locked by myself in my own world inside this very strange studio that we have, which literally feels like it wasn't inhabited since the 80s. And so that became the birth of Dr. Livingston. He's this sort of mad scientist creator who's trying to invent a way for him to fly. And he's splicing genes. He's experimenting and creating mechanisms, and both mechanical and biological, that will give him flight. And that's where we end up with Dragonbutter. He's tinkering around with butterflies and dragonflies.
Hmm. It's going to be fun to try to tackle some of these riddles
Ah!
and get through all these spaces. How You said it's two levels, but how many? I mean, are there multiple rooms for
Oh
the
yeah, there's about
escape room portion?
So there's 15 rooms, I think, altogether.
Okay.
Yeah, so quite a few. Is that, I couldn't be a miscount, close to. And some of them you know, oh, like a lot of video games, some of them you come back into, you know, and you experience it from a different, you know, I love one of my favorite things is when you come into a room from a new direction in a video game and you see something new that you didn't see, you know, lest you forget to turn around the first time. And look in every direction. So, and then, and some of them, you know, are cryptic and you have to figure out how to get out, and others are not. But most of the time, you're really focused on, you know, scoring XP.
Yes. Experience points for those who are
thank you
not as nerdy. Yeah, I like that, returning back to rooms, because you know, sometimes you just sort of blaze through a level just to complete it, and then you come back to get all the treasure that was left behind if you don't find them. Will there be a guide of some sort?
So,
or will you just have to figure it out on your own?
You are handed an inventory list and a map at the beginning. But some of it's unlocked and some of it isn't, and you have to unlock it. And the inventory is quite cryptic to begin with, so you're not quite sure what to do with what you have. So it's not really what are they? You know, what's the word? You know, a player guide. But we have a walkthrough, which is a complete spoiler alert and tells you everything that happens play by play. But we haven't published it yet because I really don't want, you know, I can't decide what to. But it's in there, and the full story and everything that happens in every room has been written, but we can't decide what to publish yet or not. So.
Well, that would be fun too. Would you create that as a companion book?
Maybe,
pick up later.
Maybe, yeah. So, I don't know. You know, with this, of course, this is again, beta. So, you know, will people come back and try, you know, to increase their score? And then we've set up, you know, our ticketing so that if you buy your first pass, you can easily add on to it at a much, you know, cheaper rate, so that people can come back if they want and try and resolve puzzles that they missed the first time, that kind of thing.
Oh, I love that. I always, when I experience a piece of theater, I'm always thinking that there should be some opportunity to come back with maybe a half price or bring a friend or something like that, because you've already seen it. But there are things that you will pick up on again. So, you know, just like the same thing as, like, I always feel like the script should be in the lobby. It's like, after you've seen the show, take the script home and read it and see, how close we were to the page. You know, can you envision our, you know, interpretation by reading it and so on? And, you know, but that's the nerd in me, like the deep dive. Like, I will definitely, I'm the kind of person that, you know, I bought the book, I have the audio book, you know, or like I've seen it live, and I will also go see it again and bring a bunch of friends and so on. You know, this just sounds like a whole lot of fun. And if anybody has experienced any of the escape rooms that are here, like, this should be right up their alley, I guess.
I think so. Yeah, it's you know, you get an hour to do, not get an hour, but you know, it's a lot faster pace. You know, so while it's much the same feeling, but things don't happen only in the same room. So you're kind of coming and going and moving a lot.
Yeah.
So it's a faster pace.
Are there devices that you employ in this piece for the first time that you know you're definitely going to carry into future work?
I wouldn't say
that maybe you didn't think you would have.
So I wouldn't say specifically, but it's I kind of just so. I mean, I won't. I don't think I'm giving too much away with this, but you are also handed, you know, a lot of you get inventory that you get to take with you along the way, and one of those is a walkie-talkie. And I certainly never imagined using this as a device. It was, as it was much more. So to explain a little further, it ended up that the way that the walkie-talkie worked was it's a way for each person literally to have their own sort of headset and hear the dialogue from another room, from across the warehouse, from anywhere, and we can sort of lead. It reminds me of old drive-ins. I don't know if this is a revisit if they have these still, but you would have a metal box that you clipped onto your window. And that was your sort of connection to the screen out there. So, but they were two different devices, but your mind folded them perfectly. The screen was over there and the sound was over here. Now we're in a theater where like everything's just blended perfectly, but they were separate at the time, but our mind folded them. And this is exactly what happens with these walkie-talkies. And it could be another room. Suddenly people can fold space. They can be in front of you or in the other room, and you're still tracking what they're doing. It was a really interesting thing that happened with a storytelling technique, that even actors were in the same room, and I had to have them, speaking to an audience, but I had to have them talking into the walkie-talkie because it kept the continuity, if that makes sense. So that it would seem very strange if you're standing talking to someone and speaking into a walkie-talkie while doing it, but somehow it, the mind wanted it as an experience portion. So there you go. I don't know if I'll do it that way exactly, but something about keeping everyone connected through this sort of audio track was really exciting for me.
Yeah. I saw a live performance, Theater Exiles Passover, at Hawthorne Park, where we were all wearing headsets.
Everyone has on, right?
Yeah, and it kind of reminded me of the what do they call them? It's like a silent concert.
Silent disco, right? Yeah.
Silent disco, yeah.
Yes.
But all the sound effects were in there, and there was some effects to the vocals of the actors that we were able to experience as well. So, if you didn't have the headphones on, you would still follow the story, but you needed that to get that theatrical experience that you wouldn't have gotten from being out in the open park.
Right.
I thought that was very clever.
I set out, I did a work in a park, bravo to, Deb and crew, they have the brilliance to pull it off, but I did not. I set out and I did a site-specific piece in Gray's Ferry Park, the Forgotten Bottom area, and I wanted everyone to be wearing headsets. And it turns out the amount of technology you need for radio broadcasting and getting everyone on the same channel, and it's really complex. So I'm so glad that they pulled it off. So I thought, oh well, we'll just get everyone on the same Bluetooth. Well, that doesn't happen, or whatever it was, in my ignorance, I bit off more than I could chew. So I ended up wheeling out a PA system every night to make that happen and get everyone on the same audio track and just blared it through the park. That worked well, but this idea of having people, to be in separate areas and still following the same story is pretty cool. I like it. Yeah,
the producer in me would have my heart racing every time. Because I'm always concerned about the technical. No matter how professional, how amazing this team is, the technical is always something that can and will go wrong.
Absolutely, yeah.
So sometimes at the very last minute, and you have to figure out how to get it up and running so that everything stays on time.
No, it's terrifying. Well, these walkie-talkies are, old school, tried and true, and that's what's so great about it is that they work, and we can even pick up the police every once in a while, and it still adds to the excitement, So it works.
Well, what do you hope the audience will take away from this experience?
Well, I think, when you talked about video games at the very beginning of this, and we were talking about that need for escape, but a rewarding escape, not just, like going through something that, has a beginning, middle, and end that you cherish as an experience when you're done. And this one gives a little bit of a sense of hope at the end, too. And so it's really that rewarding sense of escape and accomplishment and being able to sink your teeth into something that's, thrilling and a reward.
Great. Before we sign off, is there anything else we want to share with the audience before we get into the particulars of how to participate in this experience?
Oh, sure. Okay. Well, so just to honor you as a deep diver, so part of the story is that this, Deos Labs has been closed and not been accessed since the 80s. So in that, sort of homage to the 80s, I have maybe 10 references to science fiction movies from the 80s throughout Dragonbutter that it's fun for people to see if they can pick up or not. So
nice.
That's an even deeper. How's that?
That's great. I'm making a note.
All right. I haven't actually, come to think of it, these being the beta trials, but I haven't set up a reward, or sort of, a system for that yet. And, it's just kind of in there as something fun to kind of enjoy, but maybe it needs to have a little XP associated with it.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Everybody walks out with an experience point pin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or like, what are those? I was thinking of Final Fantasy when it's like ba 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 ba. All those elements of
right.
You won.
Right, exactly.
Now you're on to the next thing.
Right.
I'm very excited to experience this, especially to get to the boss level.
Okay.
Because a boss fight,
yes.
Well, it's not a fight. Is it a fight, or is it just...
I am not going to reveal this. You will have to see.
You tell I'm so curious. I want to know so bad. So, Dragonbutter is recommended for children 13 and older. So this is pretty much an all ages event.
Yes, basically. Yep.
And it's limited to 12 people per run, and it runs from July 9th through the 26th, and these are the beta trials for Dragonbutter. So what happens after the beta trials?
Well, we're going to take a little break and sort of, reconnoiter, and then we will be, knock, knock, knock on a hardwood surface, opening Dragonbutter for the Fringe Festival.
Okay.
So, or maybe it's beta trials too.
Huh?
So I'm not committing to a full-fledged production yet. I mean, this is absolutely a full-fledged production, but what I mean is, I guess the final version, as it were.
It's the gamer explanation of a work in progress.
Right. Well, this is probably just. I'm going to say my next step will be downloadable content. So.
Oh wow! Yes.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Right.
Oh, those would be fun. Well, I'm excited about Dragonbutter, and if you are excited as the listener, you can participate in Dragonbutter beta trials July 9th through the 26th. You can get information by going to briansandersjunk.com/Dragonbutter. You can also find him on Facebook. If you're not connected to the social channels, you should connect to those and get some tickets. But they are limited and they will probably go fast. So definitely jump on that. Brian, thank you so much for taking the time to unpack Dragonbutter. and nerd out with me a little bit.
Absolutely. My
This is
pleasure.
exciting, and I can't wait to experience this. Yeah, so thank you for telling me all that you could tell me without spilling the beans. And I'll be looking forward to this, as I'm sure our listeners are as well.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dana.
All right, so thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today, and we will have links to all of this, tied to the episode as well, so that everybody else can join us in that space for Brian Sanders Junk presents Dragonbutter beta trials. Thank you so much for your time. This was great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Head on over to our website at www.broadstreetreview.com and click Get Involved at the top. While you're there, help keep us running and click Contribute to find out how. Connect with us on social media, on Facebook and Twitter at Broad Street Review. Thank you for helping to keep the conversation going.